So let's use these operators and combine them into our original example. That example was that you should buy grapes if they're not rotten, if they're in stock, and if they're either on your shopping list or they're on sale. Or to put that differently, you want to buy them when you need them or when they're on sale, but only if the store has them and only if they're not rotten. This code chains together all these different operators. Lines 1, 2, 3, and 4 still create the variables and give them their values. Line 5 is blank, so it's skipped. And then line 6 performs all those different checks we just talked about. Let's try to trace through it real quick. And in this video, let's go inside out. So in other words, let's start with the innermost parentheses. On list is true. On sale is false. And our operator here is an or, so it's true that grapes are either on our list or on sale. Now that we've evaluated that first parentheses, we can ignore where it came from. All we need to know is that the result was true. Now we check our in-stock variable. We see that in-stock is true, and our operator is and. So our result is only true if it's both in stock and the result of our previous portion was true. And so our result here is again true. Now we can ignore where this came from. All we need to know right now is that the result of this entire parentheses was true. And now we move on to our last portion. Rotten is false, which means that not rotten is true. If it's false that they're rotten, it's true that they're not rotten. Our operator here was and, which requires both values to be true for and to be true. We saw that the first portion of this statement was true, and it's true that they're not rotten. And so our result is that this big long statement is true. And so that's what's printed. Now note a couple things here. Note that we used parentheses to organize our different logical statements. We mentioned that it's possible just to put a bunch of variables one by one with and or operators in between them, but usually it's good to use these parentheses to help organize our code and ensure that we get the results that we want. It also makes it a lot easier to read. Second, note that this is a pretty big long statement and it was probably a bit confusing to watch me trace through it, and yet it represents some pretty logical reasoning. It probably makes sense that we might buy grapes if they're either on our shopping list or they're on sale. It certainly makes sense that we're only going to buy them if they're in stock. And it certainly makes sense that we're only going to buy them if they're not rotten. This is complex reasoning, and yet you do this kind of reasoning every single day, usually without even realizing it. For example, you would base your initial decision on whether or not to buy grapes. In practice, you might go through it in a different order. You might base your initial decision to even explore whether to buy grapes based on whether they're in stock. You walk over and see that they're in stock, and then you decide to check, do I need them or are they on sale? If you find, as we found here, that you do in fact need them, then you might take an even closer look and make sure, do these grapes actually look good? Do they look fresh? And if not, you still wouldn't buy them even though they were in stock and they were on your shopping list. So if you find yourself getting tripped up by some of these logical statements, try to put them in terms of something that happens in your everyday life.